happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation.
On August 28, 1963, a young Baptist minister stood before over 250,000 people at the Lincoln Memorial and delivered a speech that would change the course of American history. That man was Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. King was a leader in the civil rights movement, fighting for the rights of African Americans who were denied basic freedoms and equality under the law. He advocated for nonviolent protest and civil disobedience, drawing inspiration from the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi. He was a firm believer in the power of peaceful protest and the transformative nature of love and nonviolence. He understood that the civil rights movement was not just about gaining legal rights, but about changing the hearts and minds of Americans. Dr. King was arrested multiple times for his activism, but he never wavered in his belief that change could be achieved through peaceful means. He understood that the road to freedom would be long and difficult, but he was willing to make the sacrifices necessary to achieve his goal of racial equality and social justice. The March on Washington was a defining moment in the civil rights movement, with Dr. King delivering his now famous "I Have a Dream" speech. In it, he called for an end to racism and for all Americans to be judged by the content of their character, not the color of their skin. He envisioned a future where his children would not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. He called for an end to the institutionalized discrimination and racism that had been a part of American society for so long. Thanks in part to Dr. King's tireless efforts and the work of many other civil rights activists, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 were passed, ending legal segregation and granting African Americans the right to vote. This was a major step forward for civil rights, but King understood that the fight for equality and justice was far from over. He continued to speak out against poverty and the Vietnam War, and he fought for economic and social justice for all Americans. He knew that true freedom and equality could only be achieved when all people, regardless of race, had access to the same opportunities and resources. On April 4, 1968, the world was shaken when civil rights leader Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. His death was a tragic loss for the civil rights movement and for the nation as a whole. But his legacy lived on, inspiring future generations to continue the fight for equality and justice. Dr. King's death was a turning point for the civil rights movement. His followers were determined to continue the fight for racial equality and social justice, but they faced many challenges. The country was deeply divided, and the movement faced resistance from those who opposed change. But the activists were determined to carry on, and they continued to push for progress and reform. The Black Power movement emerged as a response to the perceived failure of the civil rights movement to bring about real change. Activists in this movement called for black pride, self-reliance, and economic empowerment. They were tired of waiting for change and demanded that the government and society at large recognize their humanity and rights. In the wake of King's death, Congress passed the Civil Rights Act of 1968, also known as the Fair Housing Act. This legislation prohibited discrimination in the sale, rental, and financing of housing based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. This was a significant step forward for civil rights, but the fight for equality was far from over. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. dedicated his life to the fight for civil rights and equality, but the fight for human rights is an ongoing one. Today, we continue to see injustices and inequalities in our society that call for action and change. Despite the progress that has been made, many marginalized communities still face discrimination and unequal treatment. People of color, immigrants, and members of the LGBTQ+ community continue to be targeted by discriminatory policies and practices. And the fight for police reform and accountability remains a pressing issue. But just like in Dr. King's time, there are those who are dedicated to the fight for human rights. Activists, community organizers, and ordinary citizens are speaking out and taking action to bring about change. They are calling for an end to discrimination and inequality and for a society where all people are treated with dignity and respect. Change can also be brought about through legislation and policy changes. Governments, organizations, and society as a whole have an important role in addressing human rights issues and implementing policies that promote equality and justice. But it's not only about laws, it's also about changing the culture and the way we treat each other. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Let us honor his legacy by continuing the fight for human rights and working towards a more just and equal society for all people. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. may have been taken from us too soon, but his legacy lives on. His message of love, nonviolence, and social justice continues to inspire generations. To honor his memory, every year on the third Monday of January, we celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. Day. This is a federal holiday in the United States to commemorate the life and legacy of Dr. King and his contributions to the civil rights movement. On this day, we come together to celebrate Dr. King's legacy and to recommit ourselves to the fight for equality and justice. We march in his honor, we give speeches and participate in service projects to keep his message alive. We also take time to reflect on the progress that has been made and the work that still needs to be done to achieve his dream of a more just and equal society for all. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. may be gone, but his message will continue to inspire us to work towards a more just and equal society for all people. Let us honor his memory by continuing to fight for civil rights and human rights every day and every year.
Let freedom ring, and when this happens, when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spirit, free at last, free at last.